I was terrified of bringing to light the fact that I was this close with a potential deal, but just needed the money and the backing and the power, right? Not just the money, but a strategic partner that can help to get things done. Because for me, it was, I'm not scared of the deal. I'm like optimistic, and yes, we can get this done. But, realistic Patrick was saying, how are we, now that we're here, how are we going to get it done?
Yo, what is up, everybody? My name is Matt Drouin. I'm the host of the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Podcast, the show to listen to if you are a residential real estate investor that's tired of collecting chump change each month with the properties that you're purchasing that just seem to make you busy, not make you wealthier in the process, and looking to figure out and crack the code in terms of how to scale and do bigger deals. I am psyched out of my mind today to have a special guest, my friend, Mr. Patrick Dutton, principal of Fortified Real Estate. I am really excited to bring him on the show, not only to talk about his origin story, former Wall Street guy, but also how he did a pretty huge deal. This is the first time ever I'm going to be sharing my screen right now in terms of this deal that he put together. Talk about a skyscraper. This is the Metropolitan that is now residential, former office building. He's going to talk about how he put that deal together and kind of like how it actually unlocked, the possibility to his mind. So I know that was a long-winded introduction, Patrick, but welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Matt, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So first question, you were born, now you're here. What happened in between?
Man, such a broad, interesting question. A lot of love in between all the love, everything from great family to interesting friends to a lot of lacrosse and a passion for old things. And here I am, I'm from Rochester originally and moved back here after went away to school and moved back to Rochester about 5 years after graduating from college, and with the intention of acquiring real estate, and acquiring real estate in a downtown setting, right? Like seeking downtown properties in a struggling downtown Rochester, seeking to make my mark and to buy volume in a downtown setting. And it was an intentional move, and it's been a great one. My timing was strong, and from a young age, I saw myself as an entrepreneur, somebody who, experienced a childhood where my father was successful at the local company Xerox, not local, international company Xerox, with a strong, big, footprint here in Rochester. And, it was in the downsizing years of Kodak and the downsizing years of Xerox. And I remember my mother or my father never really being concerned about a layoff. The layoff never happened for him, but I remember my mother being so concerned, worried if a layoff was coming and something like that. And it affected me in a way that inspired me to put myself in a position of being in control, always being in control from a financial perspective, and working for myself and making my own path. So that was rooted in my desire to be an entrepreneur, and speculation came a little bit later. Started on Wall Street. I was an equities trader on Wall Street, and it morphed into how do I acquire a cool vacant loft style building and build my own loft and hopefully make some money in the process. But how do I do that? And it was a shift. It was a shift from speculation in the form of equities trading into making my mark in real estate and finding my path.
Excellent. So control of your own destiny. I get that. I mean, my whole family worked for Kodak, and it seemed like they all got laid off within a 12-month period. So that was definitely a curtain or a sort of, film kind of covering everything. And looking back on it, it was devastating, but it was also like one of the best things happened because all of my family ended up becoming like business owners in the process, and they would have never gotten nudged into that direction if it hadn't been for that, catastrophic happening with Kodak, for instance. So
that's great.
You're an equities trader on Wall Street. Did you have an interest in real estate before, or was it sort of like you were talking and rubbing shoulders with people, living in whether it was Manhattan or Brooklyn or one of the boroughs, and you just started like getting kind of like a nudge in that direction? Or was there somebody maybe that inspired you that, from early on, maybe you were in high school and you're like, I want to own income property someday? Tell me about that.
Yeah, real estate wasn't even a thing, and it wasn't something that was on my horizon. It wasn't something that was on my horizon and until I started traveling a little bit more. So I was working on Wall Street and made the move to Chicago. After 9/11, was working in Manhattan and 9/11, and moved to Chicago to seek quieter environment, still continued trading. But it was after living in New York and after living in Chicago, having spent my college years in Ithaca, and seeing neighborhoods and buildings repurposed and redeveloped in a way that was inspiring, right? It combined beautiful architecture and oftentimes just beautiful homes and mixed-use buildings, and to see what was taking place in the late 1990s and early 2000s in different neighborhoods in New York and Chicago was awesome to witness. And you start getting tired sitting behind a desk. I mean, at least I did. I'm a creative person. And for me, it was, how am I going to spend my time? How am I going to live my life? What am I going to do with my time? And for me, I saw there was a greater opportunity of working with my hands, working with people, making a difference, and kind of looking at the different neighborhoods in Chicago and New York, all the while kind of thinking about downtown Rochester. I would travel back every other week or more so for professional lacrosse. I was playing professional lacrosse for the two professional lacrosse teams here in Rochester, both indoor professional lacrosse and outdoor. And I was traveling back to play in these games, and constantly thinking about downtown Rochester and seeing this beautiful architecture and seeing so many vacant buildings and seeing underutilized assets and seeing a neighborhood that was didn't really have a clear definition of what it was and what it wants to be. And that continued to inspire me in my thinking. And then there was just an aha moment. I'm sitting in a couch in a good friend's apartment in Chicago, and on the coffee table was a coffee table book, and it was this Loft, right? And you pick up coffee table books like you do, and you start flipping through them, and I just see these beautiful, beautiful spaces, gorgeous natural light, original details of the building, exposed brick, open landscape, and it was, for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for me. This feels right. And from that moment on, I started diving in and reading as much as I could about real estate investments. How do I go and buy a loft? How do I go and buy this building? What does that mean? I mean, green as green can be. I had no experience in real estate, didn't really think about it, aside from, as mentioned, just traveling back to Rochester and looking at the different neighborhoods and how they were being redeveloped in different communities. And from that point forward, it was, let me consume books on everything from design to real estate investment, concepts of new urbanism and placemaking, intentional placemaking. And it's been a trajectory that continues today, and I continue to grow and learn more about my craft, but it's fun and it's really meaningful. And that's the other thing for me too. It was like the special sauce, right? It combined securing my own destiny, making a difference in a community that I live, and speculation. And, when you take a vacant building, you put it into use and you make it exceptional, and people desire to live there and companies want to work there. And the ground floor tenants are experiencing success as you envision for them, because you've done the right job putting like-minded tenants nearby them to create community. It happens. It really does happen. And it's been so fun to look back at projects that I've instigated, coordinated, developed, brokered, you name it. My role in different projects is different, but it's all intentional, and it's been so much fun. So it's the special sauce that keeps me going, and working on some really exceptional projects, and thankful for all the opportunity that I have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Towards the end of the show, I definitely want to talk about what you're currently working on now, because I've actually, walked through a couple of those buildings, because we're, going to be collaborating together in the future on a project we have going on in downtown Rochester. I don't mean to gloss over, the buildings you acquired in the beginning of your investing career, and some of those buildings you actually redeveloped, because I definitely want to get into the many moving parts that were involved with the Metropolitan. But before we dive into that, how many floors is that building? It's like 20 something floors or something.
26, like 26 floors. Yeah. 27 with an engineer's floor.
Yeah. So, who gave Patrick Dutton permission to go from where you're at, which you were working on some pretty damn impressive projects, but this was a big leap. Tell me about the origin of that opportunity and kind of, that whole story.
I mean, are we diving into the Metropolitan? Is that where we're going with this right here? Because there's a story behind it, and if we're getting into it, and it's a great one. But the truth of the matter is, with anything in my life, the answer is never no. The answer is never no. There's always a maybe. I'll work to the maybe. There's never, it's like, my optimism in life is just part of who I am, and I bring it daily. I bring it every day. And for me, thinking about repurposing a 26-story tower is no different than, it is a little bit different, but it's not that much different than repurposing a 5-story loft-style warehouse. It's how do you get from A to B, and can you create value? Is there an opportunity to create value with those efforts, and will those efforts be rewarded at the end of the journey? And for me, I am fairly decent about finding the maybe. And once you get to the maybe, then there's a decent chance that you can get a yes. So I always strive for big opportunities if those big opportunities can make sense. And I had built my loft. in one of the projects I had mentioned. It was like there's this aha moment where I want to be in real estate. I want to live in one of these incredible lofts. I see myself. I see that home suiting my personality well, and I'm sitting in my 2-bedroom loft. And second bedroom, this is before kids arrived, and second bedroom was my office, and I loved it. It was so beautiful, and I would look out down at downtown Rochester, and right in the center of my view was Chase Tower, right? Currently Metropolitan, but formerly Chase Tower, and but prior to working towards the Chase Tower acquisition, I was working on a deal immediately next door to Chase Tower called the Lincoln Alliance Building. It's now called the Link here locally, and had it under contract with really smart and creative partners that I have another deal with here in town. And we were working to redevelop another vacant office building, or not, I should say underutilized office building, into a mixed-use project. And we were working on the Lincoln Alliance acquisition, had it in a contract, got it listed as a McKim-Mead White building, got it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Another decent-sized building, 180,000 square feet. I think it's 13 stories, so pretty decent deal. And I was in love, right? I was in love with the building. I was in love with the numbers. Everything about it, like felt so right to me. I'm a little bit early in the regeneration of downtown. This is, I guess this is probably in 2010, 2011, when I was working on this acquisition. And then all of a sudden, right before closing, we I don't know why it took us a long time to do an environmental study, but all of a sudden we're like, yes, we should get this. We should get an asbestos survey done. Yeah, we haven't done that yet. Let's get the survey done. And lo and behold, the building was loaded with asbestos. Drywall compound. Just everywhere. It was in so many facets of the building construction, and we were really concerned about Main Street at the time. It looks different than it does today. All the projects that have been really successful in downtown weren't alive. They weren't even being worked on yet, and the asbestos abatement number was in the millions. So I think it was like $3 to $4 million, and couldn't overcome something with the city assessor. So these two issues of the assessment, future assessment, and this looming asbestos abatement number caused us to walk from the deal. It's the girl that got away for me, because I was in love. I thought it was going to be an incredible project, and we walked away from the deal. And for me at the time, it was early in my career. I had some successes under my belt, but this would have been a really big project for me and would have consumed most of my time. So all of a sudden, there was this major void in how I was going to spend my time. I sought this project out, and it was like now it was dead, and I didn't have a backup plan. So as you do, you start kind of figure out what's next. And in my notes, there was a note from a friend of mine about Chase Tower, which is right next door. The precursor to Chase Tower was Lincoln Tower, and Lincoln Alliance Bank grew to the point where they grew into Lincoln Tower, and the bank moved from the Lincoln Alliance building into the construction of the Chase Tower. Which all became Lincoln Tower, then involved Chase Tower. But in my notes, there was a comment about a gentleman from J.P. Morgan Chase in their global real estate division willing to consider sale to a strong local owner. And had this note from probably a year or so prior, because I was working on the Lincoln Alliance building. My friend gave me this information, and so I called this gentleman. And I called him and I said, "Hey, Michael, my name is Patrick Dutton. I'm a real estate developer here in Rochester. I'm going to be in New York in the next couple of weeks. I'd love to get together with you and talk about Chase Tower and what you guys are doing with it and your plans for the building. I've got a bunch of projects going on, and just curious about what's happening with your building. And I'd love to get together with you." "Oh, Patrick, that'd be great. Come out. Yeah, our offices are at Park Avenue, just north of Grand Central. Come on down. When are you going to be in town?" I said, "Oh, I'm fine on my plans now." Next thing you know, I'm in New York, and I didn't have plans to go to New York, but I'm like, if I can get a meeting with this guy, this would be great. I'd love to learn about Chase Tower if they're interested in selling. I'd love to consider the possibility of acquisition, or maybe I could broker if I can't do the deal and buy this thing. Maybe I can. There was an opportunity there, and so I go and visit them in New York City, and it was I remember these visits because there were several visits like this. Okay, there were several visits where I would go down, and the first meeting was a great introduction. It was this is who I am, this is who we are, and you learned everything about where they were at with the project, with the building, and where they were at was. They were downsizing their corporate footprint, and they were looking for a potential sale. Straight away, they identified it, said, we used to occupy 60% of the building. We used to occupy 14 or 15 floors. We currently occupy 8. We have plans on going down to 4 floors, 4 or 5 floors. It all depends on certain things. And for us, it's a losing proposition to carry this building. It's an incredibly expensive building to carry, and for us, we lose money on the building annually. So if there's an opportunity to part ways with the asset, but do so with a strong local owner with a great plan for the project for the building, then we would be open to the possibility of parting ways with the assets and doing a leasing back a certain number of floors depending on the different departments and their needs. So and then I would explain who I was and And what was interesting is these meetings served as an opportunity for me to learn more about them and the building. And for them, it was an opportunity because I was so focused on downtown. For them, I was providing them information about all their neighbors, who was doing what was happening in downtown Rochester, that they could be more educated by this information. So it was an equal exchange of information, and it always led to another meeting. And then I'd go back to Rochester, and I would sit in my loft, and I would stare at the Chase Tower, and I would say, "Oh my gosh! Like I can imagine living in those." And I just redeveloped a couple, former warehouses into residential. So I have a strong design sense, so I can see how things can come together design wise. And then I would go back to New York, and they would give me more information. They give me operating expense information. They give me floor plans, and they would give me other things that would be relevant to understanding how to make and convert an existing office tower into residential. So I'd go back to Rochester, I'd sit in my loft, and I would work on my plan. And this went on for about a year and a half, there's probably 5 or 6 visits. One they took a visit to Rochester too to meet with me up here in the later stages. But each time, you go to my first visit, my very first phone call. It's a 1 in a million type of thing for me. And my experience at the time, it was a totally 1 in a million thing. And then I'd come back, and that was an interesting meeting. Okay, 1 in 100,000. And then you come back, and the momentum was always there. I kept coming back, and my odds kept getting closer and closer. And then there was a point where you really felt the deal was going to happen. And that's when I didn't think I was over my head in any way, but I realized that it was now that I felt like I had the deal. There was a path to success, a path to closing, and now I needed to find a partner with deep pockets that could support the endeavor, that could support the plan. But meanwhile, I'm drafting my pro formas and just running through my entire business plan for the redevelopment of this asset. And that plan came together nicely. And but it was like, who's the right partner for me, because this is not something that I've ever done before in this capacity, this scale. So I put together my short list of people here locally to speak with, and I called them my interview session. They didn't know they were being interviewed, but I was like, who do I feel comfortable bringing this deal that I dialed up? Who do I feel comfortable bringing this deal to? And following those 3 different conversations and interviews, it was clear that the person that I brought it to, Andy Galena, was the right person, the right team, and the right timing. And from a comfort level, it was, and for me, it was all about comfort and confidence. They helped to bring that package together.
This is really amazing. So at this point in time, did you talk to any numbers to your contact at Chase, or were you like, let me see how I can tee this thing up, pro form it, and then find a partner and then get their second opinion on it, and then like go in with an offer together? Like, tell me about that.
It's funny. Matt, I hadn't thought about this deal in this capacity and a granular level in a while. So this is fun, kind of like recollecting different components of how this went down. There was a time where when I felt like they wanted. The relationship had been built, and they loved my optimism, they loved my enthusiasm, and they felt confident that I could get it done. So once I felt like we were there, they started being really transparent with everything, and they were being transparent along the way, providing the necessary information about the building and such. But when we started talking about the deal and its valuation, they were very clear that it needed to pass their auditors. So a publicly traded company, and their scale, their size, I don't know if it had something to do with being a bank, but the rules they had to follow were their auditors had to pass a test. And the test was one of a valuation derived by the value of the leaseback, how many floors they were taking. That was really driving the ultimate valuation of the building, and they were often discounting the vacant floors because it was really it had a negative value. You had to carry this and to carry this building is in the millions, right? It's not like a few $100,000 to carry this building annually. This is in the millions to carry this annually. So they really just honed in on the value of their leaseback being the primary driver. And I think at that point they were going to lease back like 6 or 7 floors. And the valuation was in the $10.8 to $11.8 million for a 26-story building. And at the time I was like, this is a great deal. I mean, this is an amazing deal. It's 500,000 square feet. So do the math. It's a well-maintained tower with an underground parking structure and, additional land. So there was a land that's associated with it. I'm like, this is a really good deal. And, and then we'd go through the process, and, we'll jump to kind of the big surprise to our team was that at the very last moment, JP Chase, had already passed the auditor. So they got the green light to sell it, to us. The very last second, some of their department heads came back to their global real estate department and said, hey folks, we're only going to need half those floors. So we're only taking the 3 floors instead of the 6. And my contact at JP Morgan, the guy that was my primary guy, he said, here's the new valuation. And he said, it's 5.4 million. And we got the green light. We can close. And all of a sudden we're looking around the room and it's like, oh dear God, we just bought this building for $12 a square foot, incredible stuff. But it's that's the way it went down. And it was all about how JP Chase had to pass their tests internally and paved the way for a sale. Meanwhile, they're dealing with a $800 million sale of a lower Manhattan office building, and it's like, this was just, we could barely get their attention at times because they were so focused on this. So when it was like, 11.8 or 5.4, 5.4, go for it. It's like, get it done and just get it off the books. So we were happy recipients of the building at 5.4 million. And it gave our team confidence to make bigger decisions about the asset, about building a brand new, beautiful entrance that cost 7 figures, and take out all the escalators that occupied the lobby. And it allowed us to spend a little bit heavier and take a bigger risk with the project. And it's definitely, I would say it's definitely the hottest project in downtown Rochester. And it was a raging success. It was a wonderful building, and they were wonderful partners, and super cool project. Fun to think about it, actually.
$5.4 million. Did you have this and millions of dollars a year in carrying costs? Did you have this money like laying around? Like, tell me about the numbers, the capital stack, like how you put this deal together, because obviously you were bringing in a partner to hopefully help with that stuff if you didn't have it at the time. So let's talk about the capital stack and kind of bring this forward a little bit.
Yeah, I think I want to be sensitive to my partner on the deal, and I just want to be sensitive to my partners in disclosing certain things. But
Patrick, we've had guests on from Texas, so we understand non-disclosure. So do the best you can.
I picked a partner that has a strong enough balance sheet and relationships with lenders that can get things done on essentially a handshake in a boardroom, based on strong financials, strong projections, strong comparables in the marketplace, and a track record of executing on all of their projects. So from a comfort level from a lender, I really think it was. I really think it's boiled down to a handshake with a large local lender who supports their projects and saw vision like we all saw for the redevelopment of this former office tower. That's as simple as it gets. I mean, from a deal structure standpoint, you were not talking about like historic tax credits and new market tax credits and grants for this. And the capital stack was very simple. It was, here's a lender standing behind a client, strong client with a strong collective vision for a new building in downtown Rochester, and that was it. And for me, when I'm interviewing, when I'm talking with prospective people to bring this deal to, I didn't talk about this deal with anybody. I mean, I'm talking about like it was my wife and I, and like maybe one or two other people who knew that I was working towards this thing. So it was like in complete secrecy. I was terrified of bringing to light the fact that I was this close with a potential deal, but just needed the money and the backing and the power, right? Not just the money, but a strategic partner that can help to get things done. Because for me, it was, I'm not scared of the deal. I'm like optimistic, and yes, we can get this done. But realistic Patrick was saying, okay, how are we, now that we're here, how are we going to get it done? And that team was, by all means, the right team to work on the project with, and we got it done. So very, very simple when you talk about setting up your capital stock and executing a project, unlike a lot of the other deals that I work on and you work on now.
So let's bring this forward a little bit because this combination of this project, it was a mixed-use building. There was some residential conversion on it. There was some repositioning of the commercial office space. Right. So kind of like walk us through like your major learnings of this project that could be takeaways for the people that are watching or listening to this show.
Well, it's interesting now, like you see what's happening post-COVID with the office towers and office buildings in general. We were redeveloping in Rochester. We've been redeveloping office buildings here for almost 2 generations. I mean, since the late 90s, we've been starting to kind of redevelop these towers. Repeat the question for me, Matt.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, going through this deal and bringing it full cycle in terms of your experience through it, like, what were the major takeaways and things that you learned during the process, and kind of what it did for you and to where you are today?
Thank you. For what did I learn from this project? I learned that partnerships can be really, really key. Teammates, whether they be folks that are helping you on the project or folks that you decided to partner with, they can be extremely, extremely key for the success of projects. And it's critical when getting involved with teammates to outline as much as you can, so that there's no confusion down the line, right? Everybody wants to know what they're in for, and everybody wants to know what their responsibilities are, even if they're not saying it. And sometimes things go unsaid. So I think it's really important that before you get married, if you want to have kids, right? Like, if you want to live abroad or if you want to stay locally your whole life, you need to talk through things with your partners. And on these bigger deals, very often you need partners, and whether that be a working partner who's developing the assets with you, or partners that are going to back you from a financing standpoint, or folks that you're going to call in on for a strategic reason to help you get over the hump on certain aspects of your deal. You need to know, and you need to make sure everybody's comfortable with what they're signing up for. So that's something that I learned more so, in this deal than any other. And, we had some of our hurdles to get through from a communication standpoint, but we were able to get through them. And, here we are celebrating the success of a really, really great project. For me, in addition to this, I don't think that I was ever scared of a big deal. I'm just, like I mentioned, optimistic in that way. It's proof that you can shoot for the stars, and sometimes you grab hold, right? It's available to you. if you can continue to push and be creative in solutions, then you can find a path to some deals that maybe you're just, it's outside of your wheelhouse a little bit. And for me, that was the case with this. And today, there's no project that I don't see a lot of projects that come across my desk that I would, wouldn't have an interest in if time permitted, right? So, now I'm deep into projects and I'm not seeking additional projects at the moment, but for me, it was a huge confidence builder and confirmed that, hey, anything's possible. And from a design standpoint, it's I think knowing full well what you're getting into, and my business plan that I assembled for my own self and eventually for distribution with potential partners. I only gave it to one person, 2 copies, but it's learning everything you can about the asset. And in these office conversion deals, it's tricky business when you talk about heating and cooling and certain code as it relates to operable windows or bedrooms without windows, or just different things that you may not be thinking about. But this particular building laid out really, really well for housing. There's center core, and there's 8 elevators, and half the elevators service the lower half of the building, and the other 4 elevators service the upper half of the building. And for me, it was like, man, this makes perfect sense. The upper half of the building, it's residential. The lower half, it's commercial. It's a no-brainer. You have your access control for your residents. They know what elevators are getting on, and up they go. Those are the residential elevators. And for me, it just broke out so beautifully from a design standpoint, and just felt right every step of the way. So, but I did my homework. We looked deeply at whether or not the HVAC could be repurposed and could be controlled, right? Like on an office floor, you might have 3 or 4 different dials to control temperature, or more depending on the technology. But in residential, you certainly every unit needs to control their own heating and cooling, and there were some challenges there, but we got through one. And it's been fun to think about this process, really, Matt. So I appreciate you having me on. And it's been a while since I thought back about this deal and how it came together.
So let's highlight some of the current projects you're working on, Patrick. Because right now you're like, all right, I got my deck full a little bit right now. So let's talk about those.
Oh man, I'm focused on the redevelopment of a continued redevelopment of Center City, Rochester. So there's a big portion of my time, effort, energy that is spent on continuing the evolution of the center core of downtown, that parts of which have been blighted for quite some time. So over the last several years, I've been working hard at getting the capital stack right, getting the timing right, and here we are at a moment where timing is getting closer to be really, really good for all the projects we've been working on. So one project we just finished up is called the Glennie Building. It's a 6-story former luxury home goods store built in 1880s, and it's been converted into 25 apartments and ground floor commercial space. And that project has been stabilized. It's I think we're fully occupied, or we may have one vacancy, and it's being managed in a really strong way. And it's a particular building on a block that is otherwise mostly vacant. A large city block that is mostly vacant, and all the buildings that are contained on that block, except for 1 or 2, are getting ready for full-scale redevelopment. And so that's one of the assets we own on the block. And then there's 4 other buildings, a few smaller buildings on the block, and a larger former department store on the block that is kind of waiting its turn. So now that another neighboring property owner has commenced construction on an important corner, we own the adjacent building next to the corner, and we are getting ready to start on a 10,000 smaller project, 10,000 square foot farm commercial building. We're converting the second floor into into 5 apartments and high traffic neighborhood retail on the ground floor. A lot of foot traffic and close to residences and downtown employees. And we think just neighborhood retail will actually work fairly well there in a neighborhood in downtown Rochester that is generally void of decent retail. We think we have some pretty decent retail options lined up, and are excited to play another part in redeveloping this block. So that goes next. That project goes next. We are currently creating a commons. We're knocking down a former McDonald's in the center of that same block, and it's going to become. We're selling the building to the city. But this has been a brainchild of ours for the last 12 years. How do we get this block recreated? And for us, it was breaking the block up and creating a commons. So for 10 years, I was standing on my soapbox going around downtown Rochester, distributing my vision for this particular block. And included was knocking down this former McDonald's and creating a pedestrian commons, connecting Main Street to the rear street, which is called Provision Street. And it's an alleyway. I mean, it's a glorified alleyway. And how do we make Division Street more interesting? Well, we do it by way of connecting it closer to Main Street and programming the commons and programming the different users that are occupying the street level spaces, programming those spaces in a way that make it really interesting for everybody, for hotel guests, for convention center guests, for residents, for people taking public transit, all of the above. How do we make it interesting? How do we kind of right size the block? Well, the commons is something that can do that. And we were fortunate enough to get our hands on the building, acquire the building, only to be a conduit to sell it to the city, who's sponsored by the state, to build the commons. So the dream came together. And we're building a commons downtown with the city, and we're acquiring the building next door to it, and it connects to a bunch of our other properties. We're building a huge geothermal co-op on the same block in a vacant site. It's gonna heat and cool over 200,000 square feet of mixed use space, and we're going to use the earth to do that. And then the last but not least is the former Edwards department store. It's 150,000 square feet. And it's a difficult project to perform and execute, in part because it kind of sits in back of this glorified alleyway. It sits near the public transit station. And it really needs a bunch of strong neighbors for it to be successful, especially in light of some crime issues and other things happening in downtown. But with the advent of the commons, with other projects now having commenced, another big buyer coming into the market and doing 150 apartments in another building on the same block, Edwards is getting closer and closer to penciling out, and me feeling $30 million confident, because it's going to be a $30 million project. And, I'm not at this present moment, I'm still not $30 million confident, but it's coming. And the commons helps to get that done. Then there's one more project that I'm incredibly stoked about, and we bought a historic church in a really cool neighborhood in the South Wedge neighborhood of Rochester. It's got this killer sanctuary and beautiful old chapel and wonderful rectory and interesting grounds. And we're doing a boutique hotel, an event space, and small restaurant. And we were about to begin construction, and we don't have any projects in the South Wedge, but we love these historic buildings that are eligible for historic tax credits. And we design really, really well, and but we have no hotel experience. So it's one of those things where, hey, this makes sense. The highest and best use for this facility, for this building, for this space, for this neighborhood, we're shooting for a hotel, and we're going to get it done, and we hope it's going to be successful.
I'm super excited to see all that stuff come to fruition, and I truly look up to you as a member of our community that really, really creates a lot of positive impact. And I'm glad to be your neighbor, residential-wise as well as commercial-wise as well. So that being said, Patrick, if people want to learn more about what you got going on at Fortified, how can they get best in touch with you?
That's a great question. I really don't know. I mean, how do they get in touch with me? They can call me, they can email me. but none of this information is listed. We're quiet. We fly under the radar. We do so intentionally because our hands are full, and frankly, it's hard to say no to folks sometimes when they need your help. So, and there's just too much happening to be able to respond to folks. So unfortunately, we don't have a huge public profile. We are quiet, and it's been intentional, but they can connect with you, and you'll provide them my email address, and I'd be happy to respond as time permits. Is that fair?
I'll be the gatekeeper for it. Yeah, I'll be the gatekeeper for you, Patrick. So
thank you.
Yeah, you got to be you got to go public. Sarbanes-Oxley. You got to have somebody trade in your stock, man.
Yeah. See about that.
Well, Patrick, thanks so much for being on the show. I appreciate you being generous with your time. And if you guys are listening or watching in right now, we are going to, in addition to posting these episodes on here, we also are putting out a industry expert series that's exclusive to our YouTube channel. So definitely make sure to check that out and subscribe and hit the notification button. That is Matt M. Drouin on YouTube, and we'll look forward to catching you in there. Thanks again, Patrick. I appreciate it, and we'll see you very soon, I'm sure.
Thanks so much, Matt. Have a great day, Matt.